where are the third-party games for Switch 2? Like I said, we just had Summer Games Fest. We had the big Microsoft showcase this past weekend, and a lot of people, including ourselves, predicted that we'd be seeing a lot of Switch 2 logos at these events, and we didn't really see any of them, other than games we already knew about. I think the Sonic Racing game may have had a Switch 2 logo in it. Obviously, we know Tony Hawk, the new Tony Hawk collection's coming to Switch 2. And we got Cyberpunk again, which is already out. So I think a lot of people were very surprised, but what do we think's going on with that? Where do we think those games are? Do we think that this is a matter of Nintendo supposedly has a direct coming up and Nintendo wants to save those announcements for their own showcase? Do we think it's some of the rumors, people speculating, hey, like Nintendo held on to dev kits, they were worried about leaks, and people are just now getting their dev kits outside of select studios? Are we worried? Like, is this a thing like, like there's nothing coming? Obviously, we've got stuff coming. We got the new Final Fantasy VII Remake Intrigade coming, as well as a number of other third-party games. But I don't know. I think a lot of people, this is one that people are going to be concerned about. Obviously, I think a lot of us were hoping with Switch 2, we'd break the cycle of third-party games landing on a Nintendo platform 6 months later or a year later. Do we think we're going to start to see games like the big Square games and other third parties, EA, Activision, landing day and date in the future? Do we think Nintendo's saving these for their own showcase? What are you guys feeling? Let's start with our guest today. Let's start with Hoops.
All right. Yeah, I think it's mostly just kind of a situation of time, basically. I think what you said about them wanting to save stuff for like their direct is a big deal because like you said, there's likely going to be one fairly soon, and Nintendo likes to control their announcements. They don't want to have the Switch launch and then just have a bunch of announcements that they're not making just flying all over the place like a couple days later. So I can totally see that being a thing. And then also I think the fact that the system is not even a week old at this point is a big deal. I think there's gonna be a little bit of I don't know if you call it a breather period or something like that, to where
Transitional phase.
Yeah, they're gonna give us like a week or two to play games, I feel like, before announcing more games. So I think it's just all a matter of whether it's the direct timing or whether it's the timing of the release of the console. I kind of feel like it's just you got to let these things kind of play out and sort of fall into place before everything kind of just like comes out, basically. So I think the time for all of it will come. But I also do feel like, as you alluded to, that we will be seeing these games get like day and date. I don't think there will be a lot of delays just because there's much less of a reason for there to be this time around. So I think it's just a matter of time.
So you don't have any worries about it? Like, oh no, where are the third parties? Or are they coming? Like, what's your worry level? Are you like, I'm good, they're coming?
I feel pretty confident. I mean, considering there was a lot of support going in, obviously with the Switch being so successful, and now we just got the numbers that we've sold 3.5, or Nintendo has sold 3.5 million Switches already. Like, the third parties are definitely like there. I think it's just like, I just feel like it's a matter of when they want to make the announcements.
Right. Cool deal. Stash Man, thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so I'm not worried. Not worried at all. I 100% believe all the third parties are coming. Nothing's changed. Literally nothing has changed. We just don't know the timeline. That's all it is. It's only a matter of when, not if. That's where I'm at with all of this. It would have been cool, of course, to see some games for Switch 2 announced at the Summer Game Fest, of course, and specifically at Microsoft's. But again, like, we see those games and I can tell which games are coming to Switch 2. You know what I mean? I don't need them to show a Switch 2 logo, right?
Yeah.
Like there's just certain things in life that I don't need somebody to tell me. You know what I mean? I've had this discussion about, not to get off topic, but about life on other planets, right? I don't need the government to tell me that there's life on other planets, right? I believe there's life on other planets. I don't need you to tell me. Like I don't need that from you. I can think for myself.
I wish
And
you had.
I know
Sorry to
what's gonna
interrupt. I wish you had a slow zoom towards your face.
happen.
You were done. That would be so sick.
Some X-Files music playing.
Yeah, that would have been
But
so rad.
that's just where I'm at. I don't need for Microsoft to flash that logo or anybody else because I know what's happening. You just get that in, Nate.
Yep.
Hell
For
yeah,
you,
dude.
man. We got two over here.
Nice.
Very
Bastard.
nice.
Yeah, because I used Michaela's login to get another one.
Hell yeah.
I used her Kenny logins, as I like to call it.
Nice. Love it.
So
Love it.
stupid.
Nice. Yeah, I've heard some really good things about it too. So
Yeah, it's great. So
except for, hold on. One thing about this. I saw a video on the stash. You know if it's true. It was one of the GameCube games. The Z and the ZL are, or Z and whatever. These two on the right are opposite of each other.
As you turned off the
Yeah, I know. I turned off my camera. It happens. And you can't re-button map it. Like the button mapping doesn't work. Like it says you can re-button map this, but you can't do it. Like it doesn't let you do it. They showed a video on it.
Interesting. I mean, I was able to remap my controls literally at the Switch 2 experience, and I have it on video of me doing it.
Yeah, I know. And I saw the video of the person because these buttons were flipped on one of the GameCube games. I think it was F-Zero, which was very frustrating to have this flip because you want this control.
Yeah.
So
You
and
have
they were pissed off, and then they went to the settings where because it says you can remap it, but then they went to settings and it was grayed out saying not mappable.
Interesting.
But I don't know. I have it right now. I guess I could test it for myself.
Yeah, exactly. So
Ooh, there's damage on mine.
okay, so the rest of the new games here. Obviously, we're thinking about Direct, right?
Yeah.
We're all thinking about when that's going to come. Historically, if we go back to the Switch 1 when it launched, we had a Direct shortly after Switch 1. I think it was maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks. I have a list of all the Directs somewhere, but it wasn't very long. And I just don't really see Nintendo doing a Direct in July unless it is for Donkey Kong, a Donkey Kong specific focus Direct.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still on thinking that we're going to get a Direct in June. July is just too slow. People are on vacation. People are tuned out. It's really not a great time to try and grab everyone's attention, which is why I didn't think the Switch 2 would ever launch in July. I was very clear that it would not launch in July because of that. And the same thing goes for the news cycle. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Call of Duty. That's a big question on if we're going to get that or not this year.
Yeah.
I still feel like nothing's changed though.
Yeah. I want to ask you.
I think that'll come at a Direct, right?
Do you think the reason for the lack of Switch 2 confirmations for third-party titles is due to Direct? Do you think it's more so linked to companies just getting their hands on dev kits? I mean, you made it clear you think the games are coming, so why is it that you think? Do you think Nintendo just doesn't need to? Which, I mean, that's always been the case for them at events like Summer Games Fest.
Yeah.
You know, they never have a presence there. I think we were all when Keeley tweeted that Switch 2 logo, I think it was like, oh, wow, Nintendo's going to have a presence. And I think thinking from the traditional sense where Nintendo just dropped a console and the next week is Summer Games Fest, it's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense for this to be the one time they show up. They have a new console. But again, historically, they don't show up for this kind of event. So do you think it's do you lean towards the dev kit issue, or do you lean towards them wanting to control it and put it in their next direct and have that announcement the way they want it?
Yes, I lean towards Nintendo wanting to control the narrative and not only the flow of releases. And again, they don't have control over third parties, right? When they
True.
release games, they can't control the flow of releases in that respect, but they can certainly influence it, right? And they can be suggestive with third parties, like, hey, you know, uh, this time calendar right here, we got some games that we're, thinking about putting out, or we have some games that we're planning to put out that are obviously going to be big sellers, but we have, this area over here that is completely open. This is a good opportunity here. You know what I mean? Like that makes
Sure.
sense, right? So I think in that sense, Nintendo is probably steering some of the developers to a certain time slot. And also, this gives, again, we talked about this in the beginning, this gives every game the spotlight. Okay? Because we don't know what's coming next. And because we don't know what's coming next, we're going to buy what's out right now. We're not going to say, oh, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait till, August or September to pick up this game. I'm not going to buy anything else until then. I got these games to hold me over. We don't know. And because we don't know, we're going to probably just buy what's out right now. And when we get closer, I think that's when Nintendo will make that announcement. It seems like that might be something that they're going to start doing. I mean, look at Splatoon.
Yeah.
We got an announcement yesterday, and I just started downloading the update at 6 p.m.
Yep.
So 2 days later, we're getting a Switch 2 update. So it seems like they might want to have a shorter window from announcement to the actual game release. And this all goes hand in hand with what we've talked about plenty of times on this podcast, the instant gratification consumer. That's the consumer today. They want it now. They don't want to wait for a long time. And so it makes sense, So I still think everything is on course.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah. You guys both have had a lot of great points to make. And I just want to mention this because I think this paints such a clear picture. And I know everyone on the podcast already knows this, but it paints such a clear picture of how different Nintendo is from Sony and Microsoft when it comes to a console launch. I mean, we just got the Switch 2 a week ago. We have Mario Kart World. We have Kirby Air Riders coming this year. We have Pokemon Legends ZA coming this year. We have Metroid Prime 4 coming this year. We have Hyrule Warriors, the new Hyrule Warriors coming within, by the end of winter. So within the first 12 months of Switch 2, and likely the new Splatoon game coming within the first 12 months of Switch 2. That's 6 big first-party games. Switch 2 came out in June. So we're getting a big game essentially every month for 6 months straight. Whereas when it comes to our competitors, usually we get one big game on launch year and they need the third parties to fill out the rest. It's fascinating to me because a lot of people are worried about it. But honestly, if you're a Nintendo fan and you got a Switch 2, you're going to be eating good this year. Mario Kart's going to tide you over till July. Then you got DK Bonanza, which is the big, awesome single player game. You got more multiplayer stuff coming, more single player stuff coming. It's looking good, but it is interesting how different it is. And I think probably a lot of people who are maybe less of a dedicated Nintendo fan base might be curious, where's the third party, without realizing how many great games we already are getting within the first year of the console's life cycle. Let's go over to Sako. Sako, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. I think it's kind of a dual-edged thing. A lot of these third-party games or third-party companies are probably working on games that are either already out or stuff like that, so they don't have to, announce that it's coming to Switch 2 until, not too long before it comes out, because, what's the point? They're working on it. I think they are coming. And then The other thing is, I wonder if is going to be a shift in the gaming industry where there are shorter time periods between announcements and launch because there's no delay if the game is not announced. You can internally delay the game all you want. If the public doesn't know about it, there's no delay. Nobody to get mad at you. So I think gaming companies, especially like, with how many delays we're seeing, things like that, are going to start going, okay, let's hold our cards a little bit closer to our chest here. We're 95% of the way through the game here. It should be out within the next, 3 to 6 months. So let's now put it out there, where if we do delay it maybe a month, something like that, instead of 2.5 years, or something like that. Prime 4. I think that's kind of what's going on is right now they may be working on some new games. And that kind of falls into we're going to hold on to these until, a little bit closer to release. So we aren't going to get slammed by if there are delays. And the other part of it is I really think that they are working on stuff that's already out. So, why do they have to announce it? They'll announce it and then it'll come out the next week, because they don't have to have a big hurrah for it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the Twitter drops are fascinating. I mean, I feel like the big one that we started with was Paper Mario and the Origami King, where it was like, whoa, like what was that? We weren't used to Nintendo making that style of announcement. Yeah. Now it's Splatoon, and like this is one that they could have. I have to imagine it wasn't like that trailer is just finally ready. I feel like they probably could have thrown that in the last direct, to be honest, that we got, and that would have just added more. But it's cool seeing a big announcement like this a week after Switch 2's launch. It's like, oh hell yeah, keep them coming. But enough about that. Let's go over to Nintendo Prime.
Not only do I have that coming,
yeah,
I completely disagree with almost everything said so far.
Oh, good.
Okay.
For starters, I know we're gonna be talking about it later, so I don't want to make a big thing about it, but I don't think that's Splatoon games this year. No, they didn't give a year. They didn't say 2025. They didn't say 2026. They didn't even tell us what kind of game it is. It was a teaser. Same kind of stuff we're used to getting with Zelda, and then Zelda comes out 3 years later. I'm not thinking it's 3 years from now, but I don't think it's this year. You know what is this year? Kirby Air Riders, because they said 2025 confidently when they also gave us a teaser for that. There was no 2025 with this one. I don't even know if they have a tentative release date for this yet. They're probably aiming for next year.
I don't think it's coming this year.
So
yeah, I just meant within 12 months. I could see it launching by next summer. You know what I mean?
Sure. It could. It's just one of those things where like this idea that Nintendo's doing like a shorter announced to release pattern. Well, look throughout Switch, a lot of things were announced a year ahead of time. Like that's just what they do. The only exceptions were Metroid Prime, which they never thought was going to take this long. And then Zelda. And Zelda's always teased like 2 or 3 years early. And we'll probably get the new Zelda, 3D Zelda teased next year during the 40th anniversary. It'll probably get teased and still not come out till like 2029. Because that's just what they do with Zelda. But Zelda fans are used to that. Like that's just kind of expected with Zelda. You'll hear about it. Sometimes they'll even then the next time you see it, they'll tease a year, and you already know it's going to be the year after they teased. All Zelda fans know it.
Fair enough.
Seriously, we've been through this cycle going all the way back to like Ocarina of Time. All right, man, this is what happens. They do an initial teaser, and then the next time they show it, they give a year, and then it's always the year after. All right, so sometimes 2 years after in the case of Breath of the Wild, because it was 2015, then come out to 2017. That being said, Zelda fans are used to that. And plus, I think the people who make Zelda know that Zelda fans like to speculate. So giving them all those years to speculate and theorize really hits with the hardcore fan base. So it kind of works for that game to have that longer hype cycle. But there are other franchises, it's usually within a year or a year. There are obviously exceptions when game delays happen. And Nintendo's the one company that's always willing to delay things. We can give an example like Legend ZA was actually announced with more than a year until it was coming out. It wasn't announced last October. It was announced before then. So that's actually more than a year, which is, again, that's unusual for the Pokemon company, I feel like, to do that. But
I think it was already done though, Nate, don't you?
Maybe.
Like I think it was held back for Switch 2.
Maybe. I don't know.
I know remember it leaked. The whole game leaked.
Yeah. But I don't know. I'm not going to make guesses at their reasons. I'm sure it'll be asked in an interview at some
That is
point.
my official guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
it's
gonna
an
make a
educated
guess.
guess.
I've got the balls to make a guess.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
it's an
guess that it was
educated
ready.
guess, man.
But that's just dealing with. We're just talking about Nintendo stuff there, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
this topic's more about third parties. But I just wanted to point out that I do think Nintendo's still willing to tease things far out. Dust Bloods could be more than a year out. We don't know. Could be holiday next year for all we know. And that's Nintendo's publishing that. It's maybe from software. So there's a lot of Nintendo's just kind of doing what they always do. They gave us what we need to know for the next 6 months, a couple teases for next year. They'll give us release dates at the next Direct, and then give us even more teases for next year, because that's just what Nintendo does. September Direct usually massively teases a lot of stuff for the following year. So we'll see what happens there. It's the 40th anniversary of Super Mario in September, for those that don't remember. So if you're wondering, why haven't we seen the Mario movie trailer yet? Guys, September. Come on. It's the 40th anniversary of Super Mario that month. That's clearly when they're going to show the first trailer. Anyways, we might even see 3D Mario that month potentially, that'd be nice. That would be a nice little treat before the holidays.
It'd be really nice.
Can you imagine if they do that and it's out today for the anniversary? Just blow up.
I don't think they're gonna do that.
See it tomorrow.
No, of course not.
2 months since Donkey Kong.
Dude, I don't know.
Donkey Kong.
What happened to Built Different? Come on now.
Shadow Drop, one of the biggest Mario games ever. Yeah, right now. But getting back to the third party stuff, like Eric was talking about a lot of hey, they're not really showing it because it's a lot of games that are already out. And I think that's true in some cases, like Assassin's Creed Shadows. That wasn't going to show up this weekend. Anyway, the next time we hear about that, we already know it's rated for Switch 2. That's going to be at a Nintendo Direct. And that could be like a week after the Direct, right? Like, there is a point to be made that some of the games are games that already are out, like the Cyberpunks of the world that were out. And so it'll just be a short announcement to release. I do agree with that. But what I don't get, and I put this entirely on Nintendo. Why does Nintendo want to have their platform treated like it's special compared to everybody else's? I'll give you an example. Do you guys think Call of Duty is coming this year to Switch 2?
I have no idea. Probably not.
I don't know if it is. Nobody knows.
Right.
But
we'll talk about it in the next topic.
but yeah, it's in the next topic. But there were some interview quotes saying that their teams are both their teams are working on Call of Duty for Switch, yada yada. We don't really know what any of that means. But let's say that it does come this year, because there's a 10-year contract, and that 10-year contract states day and date, feature complete. Okay, so if they were to get that, why do we have to wait for a Nintendo Direct to have the Switch 2 logo show up with Call of Duty? Why can't it just be announced with all the other platforms? And Nintendo did this a lot during the Switch era, where third parties would announce their games at Summer Game Fest or the Xbox Showcase, but you couldn't put the Switch logo. You had to save it for the Direct. Why?
Yeah.
You're not Nintendo. These are third-party games. They're not.
I don't want to interrupt, man, but I think this is a great question to ask, because I actually find myself annoyed by this frequently. It's one of my pet peeves with Nintendo, because oftentimes we get a bunch of showcases from other companies, whether it's Summer Games Fest, where it's representing everyone except for Nintendo, and then we get a Direct, and a fourth or a third of the trailers in the Direct are the exact same trailers we just had, but with the Switch logo at the end. And I'm like, why didn't you just announce it there and then make this a more tighter, just make it shorter, but like all new and fresh. So I do understand that. But I mean, Nintendo's stubborn, and for the most part, it's worked for them. But they're a stubborn
Here's
company.
the difference. Okay. So for years now, we've heard from journalists mostly that a lot of third-party games are coming to Switch 2 compared to Switch, right? A lot of them. Okay. It's good. You're going to start hearing that a majority of games are coming to Switch 2. Obviously, we haven't heard that yet. Switch 2's out now. We still haven't heard that yet. A majority of games are not coming to Switch 2 if we want to just look at the trailers. Some are. First Light as an example. That's one of the ones I'm really excited for. So I keep bringing up the 007 game. I'm really hoping they nail that one. But
it actually looks really good too.
It does look really good. It looks a lot better. Like I enjoyed Hitman,
impressed.
but like this one looks like it's even like a step above the quality of what they did with the last Hitman game. So I'm really excited to see what IO did with that game. That being said, what's really interesting to me is Nintendo has this thing that we want to be treated special. We want, when we announce Doom: The Dark Ages, to be a shocker. And Doom: The Dark Ages is one of those ones that's already out, so fine. But when Call of Duty gets announced for Nintendo, we want it to be a surprise. Like, oh my God, Call of Duty's coming back to Nintendo. And it's like, but we already know this. And now I understand not the general audience doesn't know because they don't follow all the news. But the point is the impact of the announcements is much less when it's games that have already announced at all these other events. You know what would hype up all your Nintendo fans? If the Xbox Showcase had Switch 2 logos on every fucking trailer.
Yeah.
They would
You
be
know when it works? You know when it works when Nintendo does this? It's when they do a third-party game that we've already seen, in a previous event for another company, no Switch logo. But then there's like Nintendo specific content in it. Like, I don't know, Solid Snake comes out in a Mario hat and overalls.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? That's when it works really well, and it's like, oh, sick. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I understand that, like, oh, this strategy worked, quote unquote, worked during the Switch era. Did it? We didn't have full AAA third-party support during the Switch era. Did it work? How many million sellers did we have from third parties during the Switch? Did it work? Did it work for anyone but Nintendo? That Nintendo would just drop a game every single month and third parties would get buried on their own eShop? Did it really work? Because it felt like it kind of took the wind out of the sails. Because you know what happens when these games get announced on other platforms before they get announced on yours? People go pre-order it on those platforms, not yours. So now people are pre-ordering games on Xbox and PlayStation that were announced over the weekend. And if they're coming to Switch 2, they don't even have the opportunity to pre-order it on Switch 2. And some gamers are multi-platform gamers. That's reality.
Yeah.
And that maybe would consider the Switch 2 version, but not if they already threw down their money on another platform. Especially because a majority of sales on those other platforms are digital. So this is one of these things where I feel like this is just Nintendo being a little wanting to be treated like their system is it also comes with like an Apple mentality, like we're special. It's different when you announce it for us. But is it? Should it be? Do you want it to be different when it's announced for you? Your game, the game coming to your platforms usually doesn't perform as well. Not just with sales, just even like raw performance, like frame rates and visuals are always usually worse because you're the weakest platform. And all you're doing is trying to act like getting this announcement is a bigger deal. Like as an example, I brought up the Call of Duty thing. We kind of already know that's probably a thing, if not this year, next year, whatever. It's got that 10-year contract starts at some point. If it's not this year, then probably next year, right? Because say they didn't have the dev kit long enough. I don't know. I don't know what the details of the contract are. There might even be a start year for it, and maybe this year it's Warzone, and next year something else. I have no idea. But what I will say is, what gets me is some of the games shown over the weekend clearly would like fit really, really well on Switch 2, just even with the audience of Nintendo. Doesn't feel as special. You brought it up yourself. Like they'll just play like the same trailer, but throw a Switch 2 logo at the end, and it's like, why? And I get for the general audience. Like I overall, there are people that watch Nintendo Directs that don't watch these events, so it's a surprise for them, and I understand that. But why wouldn't you want your brand front and center everywhere? Imagine coming out of the Xbox event, all anyone's talking about is that all the games are on Switch 2. What if you imagine coming out of Summer Game Fest? People aren't talking about the PlayStation 5. They're talking about how every single game's coming to the platform that just came out yesterday. Like you would own the headlines if you would just let third-party companies put the logos in the trailer. They cannot control when third-party companies release their games. That is absolutely true. If you guys want proof of that, they literally told Ubisoft you should not release Sparks of Hope on Switch. And they did it anyways. Like Nintendo can't control if third-party companies release games. And that had Mario in it. And they couldn't stop them from doing it. They told them, we really don't think you should do this. You should save it for Switch. No, all right, then don't listen to us. Because they couldn't control it. It was all in Ubisoft's control contractually when that game came out. So they can't stop games from coming out. But what they can do is, hey, if you're making a game, you got to wait to reveal it in our direct, that it's coming to our system. And that's them controlling the marketing cycle. And I don't think they should have that power. I know they can because it's their platform, but I don't think they should. I think it's important for third parties to not have their games, like let's say hypothetically, Call of Duty and I don't know, pretty much all those Microsoft games. Let's see, they all drop in the next direct, right? Let's say there's a direct this month. That's cool. That's exciting. But then what happens if Nintendo has a massive reveal at the end? Like they always do. It's usually their own game. Let's say for some reason it's 3D Mario. The only thing anyone's going to talk coming out of that direct is 3D Mario. No one's going to give a shit what was announced before it, if you're a Nintendo fan. But you know what we would have gave a shit for the 3 weeks up to that direct? All the third-party games that had the logos in it the 3 weeks before. So like Nintendo's own games overshadow third-party games in their own direct. Happens every time because Nintendo directs are for the hardcore. And the hardcore, they're not there for the third parties. They're there for more ZA. They want to see Legend ZA, although we know we're seeing that in July, right? That's a July event already.
Yep.
So might not see it in the next direct. But the point is, they're there for they want to see more of Kirby Air Riders. They want to see Age of Imprisonment and get a release date. They want to see what the big surprise holiday title that we think is out. They want to see Nintendo stuff. That's what people tune into directs for. What's Nintendo got cooking? That's all people talk about coming out of any direct. Either they had a really good direct because they were cooking with their games, or they had a bad direct because they weren't cooking with their games. That's usually what it is, unless it's a third party only direct. And those are always significantly less views than a general direct. So then why not let the third party showcases that have the millions and millions and millions watching, why not let them have the Switch 2 logos? Especially because guess what? You know who's also watching those? Maybe the Nintendo fans aren't, but people who want to play those kind of games are watching, and they will think, man, Switch 2 might be the system for me. Because all these games I want to play, I can now play on the go and on TV. Like I like if you're someone who adores Xbox and likes Game Pass as an example, but then you're like, yeah, but like I'm kind of don't like that. Like none of my friends are really playing on this right now. Everyone's kind of going to PlayStation, but I really don't want to get a PlayStation. You know what might make you want to get something else? Well, if you knew all the Xbox games were on Switch 2, and then you're like, man, but I can get them all on Switch 2, plus I could get all the Nintendo games. That's a selling point. But that audience isn't spoken to when you only reveal this stuff to your hardcore faithful in a Nintendo Direct. And it's been a problem I had with them the entire Switch generation that I kept thinking, even though they're their best-selling system and the market leader, I don't think they captured any of that audience from Xbox, PlayStation, or even PC on the whole, because at all those events, they kept taking away marketing for their platform at those events by forcing the biggest announcements to be in their own events that only appeal to their already existing fan base. So, and I get that this is probably just a thing for this year. I can't foresee we get to next year and the Xbox showcase happens and Switch 2 logos are not in that showcase. If that happens again,
that's when you worry.
I'm then Nintendo's being draconian, especially if like almost every game in that Xbox showcase ends up in the next Nintendo Direct. I'm like, okay, what the fuck are we doing? Like this is I love Nintendo's ecosystem and their games, but sometimes their decisions as a business, I just don't know if they really fundamentally understand how to appeal to anyone but their own audience. And you do that by letting your logos be in that stuff so everyone feels the confidence that, one, it builds confidence in them buying your platform. Two, it builds confidence that those people believe your platform can run all these games. Because the more the logo keeps showing up in all these big AAA games, the more they're like, shit, Switch 2 is a serious platform. Now, the caveat here is maybe none of these games are coming to Switch 2.
Yeah.
And that's a scarier thought. That's a thought I don't want to have. Because that means, oh shit, it really is just the Nintendo platform with the occasional big third-party game, just like Switch. We thought Nintendo was making progress, right? We all think it's going to get a bunch of third-party games.
It is. It has
but
to.
That exists because we just went through a huge summer showcase. No new games announced for Switch 2.
I think Switch 2 is in a different position than the Switch was. Obviously, the Switch was wildly successful. Nintendo's most successful home console of all time. But in its origin, there was a waiting period of people like, what's going to happen with Nintendo's next console? Wii U was, man, that was not good. We don't want to waste the resources, the development time. Yes, the Switch proved itself, but it also was, in an age where people are developing for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, there's a lot more hurdles and challenges and things that need to be packaged with an apology, is how I like to put it.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a different time now. Switch 2 is a much beefier machine. We just had a dev compare it to the Xbox Series S, which is a really good thing to hear, because that means that gap between generations and competitors and the ease of development is a lot closer now. So I think this is going to be a different story. That on top of everyone already knows the success of Switch. Developers are way familiar. We just now had unbelievable record-breaking sales over the course of the last 4 days. I think this is the time where developers are going to be like, okay, we don't want to miss the hype train this time.
No,
and we have the power not to now.
And I agree in principle. And there's some signs, like we're getting Madden.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're getting Final Fantasy 7 Integrate and seemingly probably Rebirth, the way that they've been teasing the Final Fantasy 7 series of games coming to Switch 2. And that would include a PlayStation 5 exclusive, and then obviously the third one that's not out yet. So, and Square Enix in general, I think, has already made it pretty clear they're going to be there. They're all in.
Yeah.
Because they're all in on everything. They're done with the exclusive train because it wasn't working for them financially.
And we could be seeing, like, it's already unbelievable watching videos of Uplay Prime, Uplay Stash, and tons of other people online playing Cyberpunk on the Switch 2, and it looks fantastic.
And power-wise,
Witcher 4.
Is
that going to happen? That would be huge.
So for those who don't know, it was in my video today. A Konami developer, the producer of Wild Hearts, which is a Xbox Series and PlayStation and PC only game, so not on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, is coming to Switch 2. We already known it was already announced. And they talked about how easy it was to develop for, and the only thing they had an issue with was adding in the fourth multiplayer person. That was their toughest thing in development because of the sheer amount of customization in the game. And so that's what they feel like was causing issues, but they did make it happen. They were just asked the question, what was the hardest thing about developing for Switch 2? And that was it. It was just adding that fourth player in. But they did do it. So there's nothing cut from the game. It's the full game. But they're the ones, when they were asked directly, hey, is it closer to PS4 and Xbox Series? Like, well, it's really hard to make direct comparisons. But from my perspective, it's closer to the Series S. And you brought up Cyberpunk. The reason that's interesting is because a lot of people are bringing up Cyberpunk 2077 comparisons and keep comparing it to like PlayStation 4 Pro and like, oh, the textures don't match up. Yeah, you know what the textures match up with? The PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series, because they didn't port the PlayStation 4 build. They ported the Xbox Series and PlayStation 5 build, so the textures don't line up with PlayStation 4 Pro intentionally because it's not the same. That's not the version of the game they ported. So it's interesting, as we've seen a lot more favorable comparisons. It's very clear that people are using the Xbox Series S, at least version of the game, on Switch 2 instead of the PlayStation 4. But that's the thing, though. We're still talking about games that either already came out or are in this, like Madden, like a yearly franchise that just wants to maximize sales. So I feel like, I'm not personally concerned yet. Well, I will be concerned if we get past the next Nintendo Direct, which I do think there'll be one this month. Maybe there won't be, but I think the last week of this month they could have one. I think they need one. As much as we can be, oh man, they dropped this exciting announcement on X, YouTube, and Nintendo Today. I know everyone's like, it's a Nintendo Today announcement. They dropped it on all three at the exact same time. But as exciting as that like Splatoon Raiders announcement was, nothing has a release date.
Yeah.
After Donkey Kong Bonanza, we don't know when any of this stuff's coming out. Like, that's the biggest sign we need a Direct. There's literally no release dates for any of Nintendo's games except Pokemon, which, they just decided to drop that out of nowhere. They dropped that. No one expected the release date, just dropped out of nowhere for that. But I guess for some reason they wanted to let us know 2 months ahead of time about a Pokemon Presents. Don't know why. Like that. I mean, Hoops is just chuckling over there. Like, yeah, what is up with that? What? 2 months ahead of the, why we just know now? It's weird. It's weird.
So just to clarify, I want to get your perspective on this, Prime, because it seems like everyone who's, shared their thoughts, Hoops, Eric, Stashman, they're all leaning towards Nintendo Direct. Nintendo's holding on to these announcements. It sounds like that's what you're leaning towards as well. Does anyone think that this could be an issue of Nintendo not sending out dev kits to a lot of studios and kind of closely handpicking which studios they want to have switched to early? I personally feel like it's probably more that they want to control the announcements, but it's probably also, I think it's a hybrid. I think it's both. I think that they were probably careful with what they sent out. Obviously, leaks have been pouring out about Switch 2 for months and months and months and months. Not just leading right up to launch, way back. So I feel like it's a little bit of a hybrid of both, leaning a little bit stronger on the side of they like to be in control of their announcements. Do you, Prime, think that this is part of it, or no? Do you think there's no merit to that?
I think there's a relevant super chat that came in about this from Demonic Brawley. Says that you think some of those trailers were made in advance, like before Nintendo allowed dev kits to their companies, because not every developer had gotten one before launch, and he 100% believes that. That kind of gets to what we're talking about. That like, hey, maybe some of these people didn't have dev kits, right? I think for indie studios, absolutely true. I think a majority of indie studios didn't have it. So a lot of the indie announcements, none of that surprises me. Like, you know, they don't have the damn thing. Maybe Team Cherry does. Maybe with Silk Song, maybe. But again, do they really need a dev kit till right now? Probably not. You know, they could get it over right now. You know, we heard there was a story coming out of GDC this year that, you know, most of the developers there, which were indie developers, didn't expect dev kits until June after the system came out. Well, okay, cool. That makes sense. It's out now. It's probably pretty easy to get dev kits now. But the thing is, like, do I believe Microsoft didn't have a dev kit or multiple of them? No, I don't believe for a second they didn't have a dev kit or multiple of them. We know EA does. Madden's coming over. That was in the Switch 2 announcement. Like, they have dev kits.
2K.
Yeah, 2K has dev kits, and yet we're not getting announcements from these people for some of their biggest games. And part of it, and I have to be a little careful here because I know a little bit behind the scenes. There is something to the dev kits because some of these big AAA studios only got like 3 of them.
Yeah, I've seen
they
that.
put them all into one studio for one game, which sucks. I mean, that's just from a development perspective, only having 3 dev kits at a massive AAA studio like EA or Ubisoft. That's not productive for them. You know, it's almost like not giving them anything, really. You're only going to get one game out of that. So I know absolutely that played probably part of a role is they just didn't have enough dev kits because Nintendo was really limiting and wanted them to limit who knew about things. This is Nintendo worried about leaks. They didn't want to give too many dev kits out because then if, let's say, every studio at EA had 3 dev kits, yeah, that might be normal, 3 to 6 dev kits per studio, but then the leaks are crazy. Everything leaks out. I don't know why they were worried about it. Everything leaked out anyways. We knew all the specs. We knew the chipset because NVIDIA got hacked. We even knew what the damn system looked like. It leaked out of it. So they didn't work. Everything leaked out anyways. But Nintendo definitely, I think, was trying to control that. So I feel that there's a combination of both of where Nintendo wants to control when announcements happen, even though they can't control when release dates happen. And they found a way to convince these companies that we best know how to market your games to our audience, which I think Nintendo is correct in some cases. Because I bet you they can point to Doom and Doom Eternal and be like, hey, look what we did for those games. Probably were million sellers on our platform. Look what we did for them. It's like, yeah, but there's supposed to be a lot more third-party games this time. It's really easy to push a narrative when you have so few major third-party games compared to what we're expecting, right? We expect there to be a lot. If not this year, next year, we expect there to be a ton of third-party games coming over. So if that's the case, you can't have one company successfully market all those games to everyone. It's just not going to work. Yeah. So at some point, they got to take the reins off. So I think there's a combination of Nintendo wanting to control and trying to make a big deal out of it, and a combination of maybe a lot of these games just literally are not coming because they don't have enough dev kits to realistically make them come over. And that sucks to even think about. But it could be that all these big third-party games aren't coming until 2026 because they don't have dev kits in time. And that's why I brought up that point that the scary thought is these games might not be coming, actually.
To be honest with you, if a huge chunk of the SGF games didn't make it to Switch 2, I wouldn't be that bummed out. When that presentation ended, I swear, like, I couldn't differentiate a third of the announcements.
Hey,
they look the same.
That's the only one I care out of there. That
was a big one.
That one doesn't come. Cloud game.
I'm bummed because when we did our SGF predictions, I was like, "Oh, dude, Suda 51. I bet we're gonna get his new game," and we did get it. But at the state of play, I'm sure that game's gonna land on Switch unless Sony paid for some sort of exclusivity, which I wouldn't imagine they would for a Grasshopper Studios game, because they're not exactly big sellers. But game looks sick. I hope it lands on Switch too. Really bad. But yeah, I mean, I think you guys have all made great points. I'm kind of down the middle. I think it's a little bit of a dev kit issue. I think it's a little bit of Nintendo wants to control their announcements, but I'm on board with Thunderstash in that I think the games are coming. Yeah, maybe not all of them. I think there are going to be some third-party games that don't make it to Switch 2. And if this early round of announcements from this year, there's a big chunk that don't make it, I think future announcements, next year and the year after, we're going to see, there might be teams where we're like, okay, not this time, but the next round, we're going to be putting stuff out on Switch 2. Worst case.
So I got 1 point to make. So, we're all talking about whether these games are going to come to Nintendo or not. And I think we need to look at it from the other side as if we're the third party. And they want to put their games on Switch too, because they want to make money. This is the console that sold over 150 million. This is the console that just broke all the records. But here's the kicker, okay? This is where it goes from want to a necessity, is that they have to follow their fiduciary duties to the shareholder.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fiscally irresponsible, right, to not release your games on the most popular platform that sells the most software, that has the highest attach rate, and that makes the most money.
Absolutely.
You can't do that. You can't get away with that. For all of these devs that are publicly traded, you can't get away with that shit. You literally cannot.
Yeah, look at all the studio closures. Look at all the games failing to meet expectations that aren't
the other
on
part.
One of the most popular consoles, or the most popular console out there right now. Yeah, it's wild. And I mean, look at Square. Square is a great example. They've struggled with Final Fantasy sales. Obviously, Square makes some amazing games. They're all in. I imagine they're going to see a big boost to Final Fantasy sales. Huge.
Their games,
and
they're anything but Square.
Absolutely. I'm really curious though to see the numbers if we ever get them on titles like Cyberpunk and Yakuza. I'm really curious to see how those perform on Switch 2.
Dude,
yeah.
CDPR is so excited to announce those sales numbers once they cross 1 million. They're super hyped to do that. And I think they also want to do it to throw it in the face of all the other developers that chose to not go physical on cartridge. I really do.
Sure.
I truly believe you can call it petty. You can call it, trying to make a point, but I believe that's how they operate. And they're really excited to prepare that press release. I really do. I think they're excited about it. So, I don't know. What do you guys think about this fiduciary duty? So it's the legal responsibility, and it's also that you cannot afford to continue bleeding out money, because this industry is suffering when it comes to development studios, right? And whether that's mismanagement from the top, we don't, I'm sure it's a lot of different things that we're not even going to get into, but the point is that a lot of people are losing jobs. And the way to make sure they keep their job is to make more money. And Switch 2 is your answer.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
I think the whole reason we're even having this discussion is because if you go back to the Wii era, that's when all this started with third parties not hopping on board because Nintendo's consoles were underpowered and so weird and yada yada yada. That's the whole reason we're having this discussion in the first place. And obviously with the Switch, they sort of rectified that to a decent degree by having a super successful console and also having one that was a little more traditional and easy to develop for. And now, but then the issue with the Switch that sort of didn't make it a full turnaround, but kind of like a half turnaround, was the power of it. And now that's not even as much of an issue anymore. It's still like kind of is, but not really. So I feel like the entire reason this is even a conversation is more or less eliminated with the Switch 2. Like every reason that a developer would have to not go with Nintendo for their game is basically gone, unless they have some like internal petty reason that they just don't want to. Like I just don't think, like Thunderstash was saying, it just makes no sense to.
And even if you do, like if you're an executive, right, and you do have that, like this petty thing against Nintendo, you're gonna have to just deal with it, because you have to release your games there, because you are held responsible as a publicly traded company.
Yeah.
And I don't foresee any indie developers having like pettiness against Nintendo. I think if there was, it would be, one of these long-standing AAA companies, right? So yeah, they literally have no choice. Like if you got beef with Nintendo, it doesn't matter. You have to do what's best for the company and for the shareholders. And things like this happen in life every day for all of us. Sometimes you got to work with people that you don't want to, right? Go ahead, Nathan.
Just to be fuck you, goddamn. Part of me is my mom named me.
Oh, so degrading.
I'm named Nathaniel. The reason they named me Nathaniel instead of Nathan was so people would call me Nathan, because no one ever calls you by the long version of the name. They always go shorter. People still call me Nate, so it didn't work.
No,
it literally didn't work. So I should just be literally called Nathan, but whatever.
Did it turn into Nate Dogg too?
Yeah, that was
because
a very common
the 90s, of course.
Yes. Nate Dogg was very popular.
Of course.
Then a lot of plays off the last name. That's a big thing our era did, was lots of plays off the last name.
Yeah.
God, just too many nicknames for my last name. That being said, Rumpelstiltskin, Janskin, Jansen the Pants.
Yep. Well, it didn't help that you actually.
No, I had that nickname before that.
I know that, but
that just got a new meaning after that. New meaning. Right? But no. So just to play a little devil's advocate, one of the common arguments I see on the internet is the reason that big third-party games maybe don't all come over is because they don't think they'll sell on the system. Not because the system's not selling well, but because they got to compete with Nintendo's games. Like we talk about how like, it's the best-selling platform with the best-selling games. I'm like, yeah, but that's Nintendo. The third-party games didn't sell the best on this platform. They sold the best on other platforms. This was actually the weakest platform for most of those games that came over. So, like, that's always the counter argument. It is Nintendo fans don't buy those games.
And I think there's truth to that too. I do think there are games that do really well on other consoles and the audience isn't there on Switch. I have no idea how successful a Call of Duty will be on Switch. Maybe it'll be the biggest thing ever. Maybe it'll be a big flop. But what I do know about Nintendo and Nintendo gamers is that when it comes to RPGs, especially turn-based, we're all here. So Square not having big games on a Nintendo console, a game like Expedition 33 would be phenomenal on Switch, and I think would do really, really well. Even Western RPGs, thinking like Obsidian games. Yeah, I don't know. I think
all the RPGs did great on Switch.
Yeah, all of them.
And the open world games too. Skyrim did great. Yeah. Witcher did great.
The two genres that I feel would do the worst on Switch, but maybe not as bad as I think, is your military shooters, competitive military shooters like Call of Duty, and then sports games. And I know you guys love sports games, so you probably hate to hear that. But then again, let's be real. A lot of times, like I love to say, a lot of those games, when they do come to Nintendo consoles, they've always been packaged with an apology. Like, yeah, we'll give you this new sports game, but it has no story mode. Like they'll do something like that, and it looks like ass. But I don't know. Maybe that'll change now. We've got a more more capable piece of hardware. You know, we have something much more next gen from Nintendo for the first time in a long time. And yeah, maybe we'll see those patterns change, especially because Switch appeals to such a broad audience now. I mean, 150 million units. Holy shit, guys. That's a lot of consoles.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
it's insane.
I don't think it's just hardcore Nintendo fans anymore, you know?
I don't think it
I-
is either. I think
Yeah.
the blue ocean strategy worked again. It worked with the Wii, right? It brought everyone in. You had Wii's at retirement homes. But with the Switch going handheld, that was really kind of the second coming of the blue ocean strategy. It brought in so many people who hadn't gamed in years. How many times have all of us heard this? Like, the Switch got me back into gaming.
Absolutely.
Like 1,000 times, right?
And
Yeah, so
in a
people who
different
got
way
out.
than the Wii. In a different way than the Wii, because like you said, the Wii was like, I think the Wii gets a bad rap. I actually think it's a fantastic console with some incredible gems. Yeah, we got a lot of shovelware, but I think they kind of put themselves in a little bit of a pickle by going so hardcore to the casual side
Yes.
that it was to their detriment. Whereas
Yes.
Switch appeals, like, once again, back to that hardcore audience.
Yeah, I think Switch just it appeals to everyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they did a really good
and the
job, because I
casuals.
do feel that way about Wii. As a hardcore gamer, it really felt like it truly catered to the casual way more than it catered to us any day of the week, right? So yeah, I feel like the Switch ironed that out better than any Nintendo console in recent memory. I would say the Switch, when it comes to the library and the variety, was as good as the Super Nintendo, which was peak. I think Switch and the SNES were peak when it comes to the libraries. Same can't be said for 64. Can't be said for the GameCube.
Well, SNES was peaked because it had every third-party game.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd argue Switch was peaked because it had Nintendo putting everything on one system, not because it had every third-party game. Like, it peaked for different reasons.
Yeah. Like, I
we
think
had
the Switch
Nintendo
is the
on
best
another
RPG machine,
Sure.
Yeah, I agree.
which
I agree.
Unless
saying a lot.
you're into AAA Western RPGs.
Yeah.
Outside of Witcher 3, didn't really get the rest.
Yeah,
so-
and the Switch is cool. And if you want to be cool, you bought a Switch too. Otherwise, you were a clown.
God, here we
chump
go.
in the neighborhood.
Yeah. That's but no, anyway, so I know I was being like a little devil's advocate during this topic, but it's just one of those things where, like, for years I've been covering all this and we've been hyping it up and, like, it's gonna get all these third party games and just gotta wait for it to be revealed and then we're gonna get third party games. And we just gotta wait for it to come out and then we're gonna see the third party games. And here we are. I know it's only a weekend. We still haven't seen it. Like, when is this happening?
Yeah.
And it was, the journalist that told us it was going to happen. Okay, so when? 10-year Call of Duty. Oh, it can't be last year because they're waiting for Switch 2. Switch 2's here. Call of Duty's revealed. Still not here. What's going on? It's a contract. It's happening.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, if it's just waiting for a Nintendo Direct, fine.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is going to be the biggest Nintendo Direct ever then if it's got all the third-party games in it.
It needs to be. It's the first Nintendo Direct. And I think Nintendo will answer the call.
Well, I hope. Even though it frustrates me if they're just holding the announcements for there, because, again,
it's their duty.
You want to build, but you want to build that up. We just talked about how, like, third-party games don't sell as well as Nintendo's on Nintendo platforms. It's like, well, how do you get that audience? By letting your logo be in the game where that audience is watching.
Yeah.
Well, look at this though. Look at the Nintendo app. What does that tell you? What is the biggest thing the Nintendo Today app tells you? One word. And it's also a video game.
Control.
Yes. Control. Guys, we know Nintendo. Some of us have read books about Nintendo and watched documentaries. They are very into control. We talked about this last year. I talked about it on this podcast. how important it is to Nintendo to control the narrative. And remember how I was worried about them losing the narrative for a little bit, and they actually kind of did, right? Because they did such a shit job with their communication on certain things that we had to end up explaining it to people.
That's what I'm
But you
saying.
know what
Though,
I'm saying?
they kind of lost the narrative with that, and now the system's out, and they're losing the narrative with third-party games being on their platform. Like the narrative
Well,
is gone.
I think it's too soon to call because I mean, we're only.
I know it's only a weekend. I know
we haven't even had these for a week.
But yeah, but that's my point.
That's hard to believe.
I know, but think about it. That's kind of my point. If we had a bad narrative that they kind of lost heading into launch happened, and now we're all just like, okay, what's next?
Well, look, we know we're getting it. We all know this. We have DK scheduled, and we have Pokemon. That's it. So we know we're gonna get a huge direct. It's the first direct. It's the first
think about the huge direct
of the Switch too.
But think about that. In that huge direct, we need dates for all of Nintendo's games. Doesn't that just overshadow all the third parties? So why can't the third parties do their own thing and have their Switch 2 logos in it?
I mean, I don't know if it's going to overshadow it. There's games that are third party that I am extremely hyped for, like Final Fantasy and Red Dead.
But do you think the general Nintendo audience that watches directs are?
Yeah. And if they're not, maybe it's our job to explain to them how great these games are. For
I think
real.
it is.
I mean, I absolutely
I think it is.
Like that's the job, like as a reviewer, right? Is to let people know how great certain games are.
Sure.
And to not that's literally why I published the Fast Fusion review first, because I'm like, people are gonna pass on this, right? Because there's no retail presence. It's an eShop game. No one's looking at the eShop for Switch 2 games right now. But it's like, hey, if you want an F-Zero one day, buy this game, right? And maybe Nintendo will commission Shinnon to do one next time. But you know what I'm saying? Like we have to tell people how great these games are so they can go out and play them, or tell them how bad they are so they can save their money.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think reviews have a lot of purpose there. My thing with directs is I think the only people that watch are the most hardcore Nintendo fans.
I agree.
And the hardcore Nintendo fans usually just play the Nintendo games.
You know, I agree with you. I'm curious if that might change a little bit now with Switch 2, though. I mean, we'll see. But just based on the new hardware, the new power, the new capabilities, I am curious if more people are going to be gazing into the power Nintendo releases its next direct.
I feel like the generation now for Nintendo is way more plugged in than it was 5 or 10 years ago.
Sure.
Like during the Wii U era, where it was just like the hardcore like Nintendo or hardcore video game nerds watching, all of the conferences. I think that has changed a little bit, especially with social media. Everything's, on Twitter, Instagram. Nintendo has a presence everywhere. Between that and the theme park and the movies, like Nintendo's name is omnipresent, right? So I feel like people are tuning in more. But here's the thing. If you don't tune in, Nintendo's going to tell you about it on their app. So you're going to find out one way or another.
And who has the app? The most hardcore fans.
I mean, I don't know. I would love to see the numbers on who has these. On how many people have the app.
You watch direct. That's the only way you know.
I think that once we start seeing things roll out on the Switch, if and when things like Master Chief Collection, the Gears of War stuff, that's going to broaden the audience because a lot of people have really soured on Microsoft. I think Game Pass is amazing. I think it's the most consumer-friendly offer, and it's a really great proposal now considering how much that they're raising all their big games to 80. Who knows? Like there might be a new lineage joining the Switch family this generation. We'll find out. Go ahead.
2 super chats I want to go the way that are just related to this topic. One is Lovable Idiot saying, I'm just asking for common sense in 2025. Well, I mean,
we talk about all the time.
That's the thing about common sense. It's not actually common.
Yeah.
That's the ironic thing about common sense.
Hey, same goes for common knowledge.
Yeah, things you think should be common knowledge. It's not actually common knowledge, but it should be. Feels like it should be. And this other thing is a point to bring up that the game key cards aren't helping the case, though, says Demonic Brawler. The story is the third parties are happy game key cards exist. So like that actually is probably helping third parties want to come over because they can have a retail presence that doesn't cost them hardly anything.
Yeah, I think they are helping the case because they come in one. Retail presence.
The thing is, he's so full of like these dad jokes, and he's not a dad. It's great. I love it. Anyways, before we sign out of this top, move on to the next one. Hoops, you got any thought on this? Stash and I have been going back and forth for like a half hour, man. You got anything you want to add to this?
I want to hear your input. I do.
I mean, I think with regards to what you're saying, Nate, with the I guess the devil's advocate, I think there is like, I don't disagree with any of that, but I think there is, I think it's kind of a mix of both. Because one thing I've been thinking as you guys have been talking is I kind of feel like it would be a very Nintendo thing to do to want to, maybe it is in the first direct that they have or something like that, but basically make a big splash with a bunch of third-party announcements all at once to basically emphasize that Switch 2 has third-party games, and then they show off Final Fantasy and like just like a bunch of like high-profile third-party games at once to really kind of like hit the nail on the head that like the Switch 2 is different in terms of third parties. With that said, I don't know what they'll do after that. If that's their plan, like, will they keep it exclusive? Will they let the third parties do their thing? I totally agree with you that like one way to just like truly take over the gaming industry, if you really want to, is get your stuff and get people excited about your products in other people's shows. So I agree with you on that front, but I think there is, I just feel like it's Nintendo being Nintendo, and they're just like, we want to make this next direct like huge. We want to show off Donkey Kong. We want to show off like, they basically want to, I feel like they want to really just like hit home that the Switch is going to have a lot of great games, and if you like lump them into this direct and show a bunch all at once, I feel like it makes a big impact. Plus, I think there's again, going back to what I said earlier, I think like timing is kind of an issue with it, because I think they want people to focus on Mario Kart and how awesome that is, and I really think they also want people to focus on Donkey Kong, because Donkey Kong is great and 3D Donkey Kong is awesome, but it's also the first 3D Donkey Kong in like 25 years, and it's not Mario at the same time. So I feel like it's kind of a game that I think will do well, but it also is not just automatically going to do well. So I think they want to like give that its time to shine, and then kind of once they get the opportunity to do that, roll out some of this other stuff.
I think it's a good point. In playing Mario Kart, so I haven't played it a ton, right? Because I'm working on other stuff too. But just to confirm, there's no Donkey Kong tracks, right? Right. And I was talking about Donkey Kong being the first expansion. Talking about this a few months ago, how I thought we would get an expansion.
There's kind of a DK theme track a little bit.
Well, we actually had like Donkey Kong titled tracks, right?
Right.
And obviously Joey Pitts, right? Joey Pitts will tell you every week. Diddy's not in it.
DK Spaceport. Donkey Kong Spaceport's in the game.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking.
So there is a DK.
I do see where you're going with that, though.
You just threw him off.
Because like they don't have I mean there's way more they could do with Donkey Kong for sure, I feel like.
Absolutely.
So I agree with where he's going with it.
I feel like we're missing a Donkey Kong like cup, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're missing about 4 Donkey Kong tracks that could be in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
if DK is like the first thing to get like a Nintendo World expansion at Universal Studios, then I think that more or less can apply to something like Mario Kart. So
Yeah,
I kind of almost feel like, since Bonanza is a thing, and now and it's not just like it's a big deal of a game. Like, it's not a B-list game. Like, this is like a major Nintendo release. I kind of almost feel like with this, and then obviously with like the Mario movie, and then Super Nintendo World and all that stuff, I feel like they're almost, and you could even say the rebrand of Donkey Kong, like the redesign. It's almost like they're trying
Yep.
to raise Donkey Kong like individually, like separate from Mario, like up a level, because
yeah,
he
feels like he's being relaunched in
Yeah.
a sense. Like there's already the rebranding, so you call it a relaunch, a reboot of Donkey Kong, a re-emphasis. It could be a lot of things, right? And one thing that we've talked about a lot, but I've always thought that Mario Kart World was going to be like the driver for all the Nintendo IP, free advertisement. So, hey, we're going to release a Donkey Kong themed cup in Mario Kart. And guess what? 70% of you have that game, because 70% of the Switch 2s are Mario Kart bundles. So now we're advertising to 70% of the install base Donkey Kong for free. We're not having to pay for commercials. And there's a track in the game now, because I would presume that we would get some of the classics, but there's going to be a track based on DK Bonanza. And that's how you advertise in game. And that's how you continue to. This is why I think we're going to get a lot of IPs in Mario Kart, because Mario Kart's literally the driver to advertise all your IPs for free.
Cool. Well,
Totally.
speaking of new IPs, Eric.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not really
I mean,
new IPs. It's about driving
Yeah.
driving other Nintendo IPs.
Yeah.